Well, in that case, I call the February 11th, 2019 Toxic Board meeting order. Let's see.
Objective for the agenda. Is that process like call?
So one person motions.
I motion to approve the agenda as is.
I second.
Okay. Vote on those in favor of approving the agenda as is. Aye. Raise your hand.
Aye.
Okay, passed unanimously. Public comment period. Let's see. I believe we have one public comment coming in. So I'd like to thank you for attending a Toxic Scrutiny Board meeting. Public comment period is an opportunity for individuals to provide comment to the Toxics Board on issues related to the Toxics program. We would prefer if you kept the comments to a 3-minute period, please. And please state your name and the organization that you represent, if any, for the public record. Actually, I think you're sitting to the back of the camera. I don't know if that matters to you or not. And please conclude your comments.
Am I being filmed or?
Yeah.
These are recorded,
Yeah.
put online.
Please conclude your comments immediately after you've been notified that you've reached your time limit. So,
Well, thank you, Chairman, and hi, everyone. My name is Ralph McDonald, and I'm a member of the Eugene Sustainability Commission, and I volunteered to be a liaison to the Toxics Board.
Thank you.
So I have interest in your agenda, and worked with Lisa Arkin, who was previously on the board in the pollinator stuff a little bit. And currently the Sustainability Commission is looking at some issues that overlap, I feel, with the Toxic Board. So in general, the Sustainability Commission felt that if boards and commissions can be working together on some issues, then maybe we can have a more impact on City Council, and those things that are priorities for everyone can get work sessions and get through City Council. A couple of them specifically, and unfortunately today I have another obligation, so I'm not going to be able to stay for the whole meeting, but I'd like to stay for the first hour and get some notes on what your priorities are, what your current work plan is, to report back to my commission. A couple of areas that I think might overlap. Last couple of summers there's been smoke inundations in Eugene, and particularly in the South Hills where I live, and the neighborhood associations out there are pretty concerned about that. And El Rapa Air Pollution Authority has said that in general the air is very good in Eugene. So it's interesting that 360 days a year, maybe we are better than average for the whole country. But those days when it's bad, it was, at least on a couple of occasions, the worst in the whole country, very, very highly toxic air. So, it's kind of like if you're safe almost all the time, but you get run over by a truck one day of the year, it's a bad thing. So we would like to see some regulations that on those days when conditions are horrible and there's really bad smoke, that there's some control on the small particulate and the other toxins in the air. Atmospheric toxin, I would assume, is part of the Toxics Board's regimen. The other area is, before the City Council right now, there's a work session. The second work session is on March 11th for food serviceware plastics and plastic bags and extruded styrofoam. And many cities throughout the country, and even in Oregon, Portland, and Florence over on the coast in particular, have prohibited extruded polystyrene, i.e. styrofoam, from being given out by restaurants for takeout food. There's good alternatives. There's paper products that can be used, and they're much less toxic. And they're toxic in the sense that they're found very commonly killing sea life, but in sea life and in mammals too that are eaten by humans. And one study recently showed that people with micro particles of plastics are getting into people's bodies in a very large number, very escalating number, and that could be avoided if we didn't have so much plastics going into the ambient environment. So anyway, those are a couple of areas, the smoke and the plastics, and I would hope that maybe you consider your own letter to the council saying that as the Toxics Board, you support the regulation of extruded polystyrene and plastics. And they're looking at several things, maybe plastic bags like the grocery plastic bag, maybe extending that to restaurants. And maybe having serviceware forks and spoons be by request rather than just giving them out, and they don't have to be wrapped in plastic themselves, so just general things that could limit the plastics. Anyway, thank you very much, and appreciate being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, that's it for public comment. Oh, thank you. One thing we did manage to skip, unfortunately, was the introductions. Sir Lane.
James Lenhart, Program Manager for the Tax Rate to Know Program, the City of Eugene.
Andre Phelps, neutral position on the board.
Mark Kruger, Industry Advocate.
Evan Schenken, Citizen Advocate.
Crystal Abrams, Citizen Advocate.
Don Egan, Industry Advocate.
Okay. So I think that took care of the first two items now, which brings us to the big thing. So the big thing is James is new to the position. We had a long gap, which means we're actually slightly behind the power curve in terms of approving the work plan and budget for the next year. And so that's what's actually going to chew up the majority of this meeting, possibly the next one. Thanks to you.
Okay, so I sent you guys quite a bit of stuff, and
Did we want to follow up with the public comment at all before we move on, or no?
No.
We can put that on the future.
Okay.
Yeah, oh, that's March 11th. Maybe we can do that afterwards.
Okay.
Because we really do.
Yeah, it's coming.
I just appreciate your comments and love to follow up with you. And,
Just a point of information, on our board, I mean, all the boards I'm sure do it differently, but on our board, after public comment, commissioners have 5 minutes, not 5 minutes each, but 5 minutes as a whole if they want to make comments about the public comment period. But just something for you to consider in the future if you want to do something like that. I mean, you don't have it on the record right now.
okay. So let's jump at the budget first, because that does affect the work plan next, which was made off of some assumptions. So this is similar to what I mentioned last time. I've expanded some elements to giving some options to try to make this as easy as possible for everyone to dig into. So where we are currently is there are certain items that are basically provided to me of this is what the program is going to be charged. Everything from the total amount of what the wages and benefits and that whole package is for staffing the program, and then certain things including basically office rental, utilities, all that, advertising, some different things that are within the standard expenses for the program. If you look under on the first page, or really on any page, and you look at the 100% staffing, that shows you everything added in. That would be if everything was paid at 100% by the program, by the Toxics program. The two real areas where we have, oh, okay.
It's a good time, it's raining.
The two main areas that we have room to be able to move things are what has been added in under contractual services other in the expenses. There's a total of $8,500 in there. $5,000 of that is the funds that the board had previously requested to have allocated annually to build up towards a new reporting system. And down the bottom line for $1,200 is allotted for if the board wants to look at having minutes taken professionally each meeting. So that's what the contract cost would be for the course of the year.
Which one was the minutes one?
The minutes is the bottom line other expense for $1,200.
Because we talked about just like rotating around. Just,
Oh, okay, that's
just like
news to me.
that's non-professionally, right?
Yeah, so, yeah, we used to have someone take minutes for
Mhm.
us, then we lost funding for that, that's why we have recorded. So then what we ended up doing was, and it was just, that was actually off of my request, but Joe just put together just a real quick summary of the meeting afterwards, so there weren't real minutes, but, yeah, I don't think, I think that that's not an allowable expense anymore.
It can be now, because she got some guidance
She did,
that
okay,
it was taken away, they said, don't do it anymore.
right, okay.
And now it's kind of a, well, we really encourage you not to.
Yeah.
But if you really want to, and being that the toxics program is non-general fund, that gives it a little bit more flexibility.
Okay,
It's still strongly encouraged to not do that, but she asked for that allotment in there before she left.
okay.
So they did mark that into the budget line items.
Would we still do the video recording?
The video
On top
recording
of
would still
minutes?
be, would still
Okay.
take place, because that's an overall city policy to
I
make
see.
it more accessible.
Okay.
And I hate to interrupt you again, but this contractual services, the 5,000 that we have in
Mhm.
there annually, I thought we removed that last year.
When I sat down with Joe, what she
Yeah.
said is that that was only a temporary removal.
Okay.
If you want to permanently remove, that can happen too. So that's why option 1 is added in, later options that has, option 2, the minutes recording is removed.
I see, okay.
Option 3,
I see.
the database, option is removed, and option 4, both are removed.
Got it. Thank you so much, sorry.
No, that's okay. I also added in, just because it was easy to do and just to make it more difficult for you, I added also an 80% staffing option on each item to try to give a wider range of here's the options for what the funding situation would be for the program. Also, on the very bottom row of every page, there's the cost per FTE for the target revenue. I calculated that for each option and for each sub-option to be able to, if whatever is selected, that would be what it would have to be charged up to the $2,000 maximum for a business.
So we're deciding on whether, like, we're looking at these line items and determining what types of model we might lean towards.
Basically, you have option and sub-option, so you have the overall, if you want both those two optional costs in there of the minutes and the adding money towards that potential new database, or reporting system, I should say, and then what staffing level within that. So that's how each one works.
Evan, do you remember last year, we were trying to get the cost down, FTE cost down, and so we
That's right.
removed the $5,000 line item. And then the
Yeah.
minutes is a whole new thing that's been added.
Got it. Yeah, that's right, because there was $5,000 that was put towards like software to be able to upload and download in Excel,
Yeah,
and
kind of
yes,
our that to-do list that we're hoping for.
yeah. Then you gave it an institutional memory that like, yeah, a citizen advocate were for it, and then they became against it, and then people.
Yes, that was.
Well, and we have the ability to load from Excel, so one of the big IT projects had already been accomplished,
Mhm.
right? And so the question is there a big IT project coming up
Yeah.
that we should be saving up for? And I don't know, is there a big one that anybody has on?
The question is too, is like, as a budget, you know, if you don't use it, then you lose it, so, you know, is there that sort of need to sort of find, you know.
From what I was informed, that $5,000, if it's added in annually, that is not a use it or lose it. That actually gets compiled and added to each budgetary cycle.
Because it seems like legal services, like $1,500 can go in like, I don't know, 5 minutes or something, like when they're in the shower thinking about it, and you're like, okay, all right, and then so, maybe.
Again, and we all of these we normally stay within. So those
Okay.
are, I actually monitor those very regularly as they're going to be happening in real time.
That's right. Because the legal, like, they're now on retainer, so it's like,
And those legal, that's a little bit different than like the ongoing claim that's been going on.
okay.
That's a little bit different in how it works there.
So what happened to the $600 parking charges that just disappeared for the others?
So, the parking charges, the City of Eugene parking system changed this
Oh.
last year.
Cool.
And what it used to be is that you basically rented the spot. Now it's, you literally are, it is to the vehicle. So, because of where the vehicle's parked, if it's not great weather, I can say for myself, I don't want to have to walk through that weather to go get the car, to use it for city business. I would pick it up in the morning. Well, I can't leave my car there. So what we're gonna do is transfer it out here to Second and Chambers, because I can come by here in the morning to pick up the vehicle, to use it for meetings or the like. But then we don't have to pay $600 a year. I see no reason to leave it in a parking garage, to pay money out of the budget when we don't need to do that, because we can have it out here for free, which I confirmed.
Okay, that sounds good. Yeah, so it's not just like over at Fleet.
No,
Okay,
well, right now it is, but that's because there's a different issue.
got it.
But,
Okay,
but no, it would actually be out here, Second and Chambers.
yeah, that sounds good.
And the actuals versus the approved budget, that's because Joe left
Mhm.
during the.
The reason is so low is because she left really early in the budgetary year.
Mhm.
So is the, may I ask, so is the overarching effort for today for us to select one of these many items and then sort of, propose to city council?
So that would then give us what the fee structure would need to be.
Mm-hmm.
And that also allows us to then address the work plan. Right now, it's been built off an assumed 90-10 split. If you decide to go vary from that, then it would adjust what those numbers will look like.
Okay.
So that would be that affects that discussion. So budget kind of is the first big question.
Yeah, so the two things we have to decide is the percentage of staff, and then what kind of add-ons we want, if we want any.
Where,
And then what you look at here is this, I mean, this is what we focused on in the past, is, last year the fee was $65.43 per FTE. That's the final line here on the bottom that goes through the different FTE charges. Mostly last year, we were trying very hard to keep it as close as we could. But we did bump up her staffing levels from 85% to 90%, but that's also why we took out the 5,000.
Oh, okay, so that way the
That was
that's
sort
right,
of
that's
that
right.
balance that
Yes, got
that
it.
we found.
Yeah.
And I can say I spoke with the fire marshal, and they would very much like to keep at least 10% of my time. So that's
part of part of the reason we're looking at the FTE costs so heavily is that affects the smaller businesses disproportionately.
Yeah.
And so if we can keep that, for larger companies, it doesn't matter,
Totally.
but for the smaller ones, it becomes a big issue.
Yeah.
Wait, what becomes a big issue? I'm sorry.
For sufficiently large companies, because of the cap, they're capped.
Mhm.
And so the FTE, amount per FTE is irrelevant to them. It's the smaller companies that get disproportionately affected by this. And so that's why I think last year we were looking at that bottom line number, or that FTE number so closely, to try and alleviate or reduce the burden on those smaller companies.
Okay.
it's at about a point of 28 to 30 FTE when they start bumping up against that cap.
Okay.
So if you think about it, that's anywhere from 10 to 30 employees.
I wonder how many of the companies are in the lower brackets where they're like the small companies. I don't know how we define small companies.
Well, we have
Going
that.
off in the weeds
So
too.
there's,
I don't
yeah,
need to
so
go.
that whole discussion about
Yeah.
small versus large, we had a long
Okay,
discussion on
yeah,
that.
let's just table it.
So yeah, let's just say how about the FTE, the ones that pay per FTE and those that pay the cap?
I think that's a good, yeah, that makes sense.
And that varies on what the amount per FTE is. Because the lower the amount per FTE, more people will fall underneath that cap. Compared, just because we aren't changing the number of businesses, or the number of FTE at this point.
Although we're adding a couple, right, to the list.
This year, we've already identified several. That will be, there's 4 right now that are in the process of being onboarded. And I believe I've identified more already that probably will be brought in.
Awesome, that's so good.
So how do we feel about the minutes recording in the database build-up funds? Do we want to say yes or no on one of those? I mean, I don't really see a huge need for the minutes recording. Does anybody else?
Probably break it down into, let's look at one and then let's look at the other one, so maybe we can look at the minutes, make a complete decision on minutes and then
Yeah,
look at the next
absolutely.
one. So, I don't know. Opinions on minutes, obviously you heard mine.
My opinion on the minutes is that I think it's an unnecessary cost. Does anybody else kind of think we need minutes?
I would support that notion. I mean, it seems as though if there is an issue with, you know, something comes up, somebody says something, we could have it retroactively recorded, assuming that the video camera works, and so we could say that. But you know, and also, you know, you read the minutes and it's like, you know, I killed that person and it was sarcastic, but you can't always get the sarcasm. So I would say, generally speaking, unless other folks have real, yeah, I don't think it's particularly necessary.
I've watched several of these videos, and when she was here, you could never hear her.
Really?
And most of you guys talk kind of soft, so it's difficult to hear. And I would rather read than go through an hour and a half video.
Yeah.
So just to me, it's better to have it documented, the way we have been doing it.
Or
Not
have
professional.
subtitles? No, I'm joking.
This might be some food for thought. I had a long conversation with Manny, our videographer for the department, last week, or not last week, after last meeting. And he was saying that he knows of some potential equipment options that we might be able to leverage.
And there's desktop
To increase,
microphones
Yeah.
and stuff like that.
to increase the audio for it. That would be a reasonable price.
That would be lower than this minutes?
Be lower just, and it might even be able,
Definitely.
especially being that we've had such the long vacancy, that we possibly could fit it into this budget cycle, into what's already been allotted to the program.
Okay.
So that's what we were exploring.
So how do you feel about how Joe's done it in the past, where she kind of wrote up a page summary of the meeting? Does that feel like something possible for you, or is that?
I think it is. It's, I mean, I'll be honest, not my preference,
Right.
but it can be done.
Okay.
It can be done. It can be handled.
Because the way it worked when I was chair is that her and I would sort of look at our notes together, she'd put something, or just review what I had. It didn't, the only thing that worried me is that then she was spending time doing that when, you know, it's better if she's running the meeting the way she was, but, yeah, I don't see a need for professional note taking, especially if we can up the audio and,
And I'm okay with it.
Okay. So we'll
Do-
see about it, and then if it's not a,
do we want to discuss one of us, maybe just taking a few, I mean, really basic notes, not much longer than what we have on here, but we just have a summary of the meeting?
Maybe have a rotating note taker, or have a designated note taker for these meetings? I definitely would support that, yeah.
because we had precedent
As
for
long as I
it.
don't do it.
That's what I was wondering. I saw that part. Yeah, so I'm pretty fast with typing and note taking, so I'd be happy to do it like once every other meeting or so. If you just let me know ahead of time so that I can bring in a device to do it, or if there was a device provided to me to just kind of type on.
I'm happy to do that too.
So, it sounds like let me summarize to see if everybody's on the same page. We were looking at removing the $1,200 for the minutes, using some of the budget from this past year to provide enhanced audio equipment, and then having minutes handled by board members. Is that a correct assessment?
As long as it's not, we're not asking Dawn to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I would forget that.
Sounds good.
So that brings us down to what, which options? That's 4, 3, and 4? No, 2 and 4.
2 and 4.
Well, so that's one of the items, right? It sounds like we're pretty clear on the minutes. The other item would be the database fund. IT services, right, which,
So that one's a little more, it's different than just the IT charges, because that's already in there. So this was specifically, from how Joe related to me, was that it was building up funds to try to get a new reporting system rather than the archaic one that we have.
Yeah.
The one that we currently have, until, I believe it was last year or the year before, it was still on floppy disks, the backup of it.
Like the 3.5 inch one?
Yes.
That's so cool, isn't it?
That's how old that system is. It was hand created. They've now done some things to make sure it's a little bit more secure than it was because of upgrades to ISD. But there are holes in it as far as sooner or later it will need to be replaced.
Is this, I'm sorry, is this the big map showing the industry location?
No, this is what the industries go into, report their FTE, report their quantities. It is technically the same system that Hazmat uses within the fire department, just two different parts of it. I know they are looking at a new system themselves because something needs to change. So there may be room for the toxics program to latch on, and so that they're actually looking at that. They're in an RFP stage currently. But I don't know, I haven't had a chance to really have much discussion with the people that are running with that.
So these are options for like streamlining the process for reporting industry so they can like more simply like have auto-populated or all these
The
other.
hope is to make it easier, to make it faster, to make it more approachable for the public, to get the information.
Yeah.
It's really, try to bring it, out of the 90s and into the 2020s. It's an old system, and so there's also concerns of security with it. I mean, right now it's kind of a little thing, but because it's so old, there's that, as anything, software has a lifespan. So how Joe described it to me was that her understanding was this was to slowly build up funds to hopefully buy a new system. Sounds like your understanding might be slightly different, so.
I would ask two questions. One, what's the time horizon for this? What sort of, for the hazmat folks, what sort of timeline are they looking at? And the other one, of course, be what sort of monetary amount are we looking at? Because that sort of drives what sort of rating game fund we need to be.
And all I know at this point is they have just wrapped up the initial RFP stage, so now they're going through and evaluating vendors to then provide proposals, which will happen like by March.
Oh, wow, so quickly.
So, but then, and they're pretty sure who's probably going to end up being, but there's still that process, so I would expect not until April, May to know a real answer as far as on that side of who they're selecting, and then it starts saying, okay, what's cost, if we can jump on board with it, what would that cost be? There's just a lot more conversation, just the numbers aren't even there yet.
But if they're picking a vendor, that means their time horizon is relatively close.
Their plan is this year to bring this in.
Answer that question.
Yeah.
That's the plan.
That sounds good. So they can, we can maybe see what it looks like or have an economy scale with, jumping on board with the vendor or whatever.
Yeah, I've had the first conversation with the person who's spearheading it, who's like 4 doors down from me. And so we're gonna have some more conversations once he can give me some more concrete information.
Sounds great. I mean, that sort of ties into I think it is in some fashion to, this idea that I haven't fleshed out yet. It's just like this notion of combining Oregon and California reporting standards as like California businesses move up here. Like, is there a way that we can, use the models that folks have been using down in California and like apply them here so that there isn't this like learning curve of having to learn the new stuff and new formatting, and also like with California's like stringent reporting standards, having both like a a win for efficiency and a win for like reporting. So anyway, having gotten to the bottom of that, like I think there's something there.
Well, if they're going to be implementing it this year, my suspicion is that the cost to join in would probably be more than $5,000. At which point, is there a?
I have no idea.
Okay.
Because I have no idea what this system would cost. Because it's often, these types of companies, it's scaled by how big your organization is and what you're going to be doing with it. And this is something that's department-wide. So a majority of it would be funded by the department because they're using for that. So I have no idea at this juncture. I mean, most database systems I've worked with, when you're talking about smaller scale, like we are, sometimes it's $10,000 a year, sometimes less, sometimes a lot more.
On an annual basis, just
On
to
an
make a
annual
system.
basis.
Man, that's expensive. Can we just write that
Actually,
software,
that's
like
pretty cheap.
in-house?
Oh, God, yeah.
That's actually pretty cheap.
Is it really?
That's extremely cheap.
Yeah, my SDS authoring software I use is well north of $13K per seat,
Mhm.
per person who can access the system.
Nice.
Sounds right.
Wow.
Yeah, so 10K,
Is not bad.
Here, okay.
And often with that, you have their support, so you aren't using your ISD funds to support it. You just call up and say, okay, I'm having an issue, you open a ticket and they take care of it.
Okay, so if that was to go forward and just, for hypothetically ballpark 10 grand, that would be a new line item that we have to budget for every year.
That would be a
from
new one.
here on out.
If it came to that, I would be surprised if it was that much, but I don't know.
Yeah, okay,
how is there a chance of you getting a ballpark before the next meeting?
I doubt it,
Got it, okay.
because they don't even have the proposals yet.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Because how the process works for the city is, first they do the RFP, which that's just basically they put out information saying, if you'd be interested, and people make basically a pre-proposal, saying, yes, we're interested to do this, then they provide proposals. And so it's just a very long process.
Yep. So it sounds like, the hazmat model, we'll see just by them moving forward and then.
And there's, for the city, there's also the interest in trying to combine it, because already a lot of the same people that are having to, report with the Toxic Waste to Know program also have to get hazmat permits. Well, if we can combine more things into one place,
Yeah.
it makes customers happy.
Yeah. We could just, they could just enter it there and then we get that information, we don't pay that and everything.
I do all that.
Yeah. It's,
That's a pain.
Is it?
and I believe it's actually technically the same system
It's very
the state
similar.
uses also. So there's a really exerted effort to try to consolidate a lot of this, to try to make it easier across the board.
Sounds like a good opportunity for, everybody on the table.
Yeah, I definitely support that item and keeping it moving forward with it.
Just want to make sure everybody looks at that sort of the bottom line between those two options, right? One is $62.23 and one is $69.95.
Which version?
So last year the fee was $65.43 and this, the committee, one actually lowers the
Right, option
FTE
four.
allowance. Yeah, option 4, then option 2 raises it by about $4.50.
So the $5,000 figure, do we know where that comes from? Is it just an arbitrary,
That's what we.
just a, so we could set aside a different number if we wanted to?
I'm not sure, because that had to get approved.
I don't
I'm
know
not
about
sure, I
that.
think there was sort of an issue with that,
Okay,
if I remember correctly.
is that something you could check in on?
I can check on that. I mean, I can also, there's also, if there's the option for this other system, it may, from how Joe describes to me, that it's adding up to build up, to buy something, it may not be worthwhile to be building up. It's looking at adding on to a monthly fee. So that, because there's already the 5 there, just holding on out there, so. And we still have room in our budget this year if something happened in this budgetary cycle. But that's even if they could roll out a totally different portion that's a little more unique into a new system right away.
Can you touch on that a little bit? What do you mean by we have room in our budgetary cycle?
Well, as in, right now, we haven't spent anywhere near what our budget was for the year.
Right, so how does that work?
So that I have to get to the bottom of.
Okay.
But I can say that at this point, certain areas of our budget, we haven't spent much. In some of our more other expense or miscellaneous expense type of things, because nothing's been bought, because there was no one here. And there's some other things that I have to converse with finance more about some of that because of the uniqueness of this program.
That would be a really important question for us. What about funds that haven't been used?
Mm-hmm.
Like what happens to them or?
Yeah. Can we still use them on? Yeah, because we've never had that question before.
And looks like it's quite a sizable amount, looking at the difference between the approved budget and the actuals for 2019.
And I will say some of this, I don't know why it's not there yet, and it's another reason why I need to talk to finance. Because things like, the building and land rental, I'm assuming that they do that as a single transaction, like right at the end of the year. Because right now, the journal entry hasn't entered into the system.
Okay.
So they aren't doing it obviously by a monthly type bill. So these numbers I ran back when I first created the spreadsheet. And so there's a lot of things I know that are missing that are going to be there. They're going to be charged in the program. I just don't know why they're not yet.
And I want to make it clear, I sort of misspoke. I was assuming a 90% staffing when I gave those numbers before. So that is still another question that has to be answered, what the staffing level is going to be, so sorry.
So the prior decision of the board was just to have 90% staffing. And then which option was it? Like, what would be the neutral option for moving forward in this
It
next?
would be option 3, I believe, where we have the 90% minus database, but including minutes. Is that correct?
Neutral? What do you mean by?
Unchanging the options, right?
No,
Yeah,
we
exactly.
didn't have minutes before.
We didn't have this bill.
No.
Okay.
So, so that one's a fully, yeah.
So, and it depends on what you're looking at, because if you're looking at neutralizing by cost per FTE, because we've had a few businesses leave Eugene,
Yeah.
it has reduced the total amount of FTE, which has pushed up the amount per FTE.
But then the
across the
forward,
board.
sorry to catch up.
And then, once we get more businesses onboarded, that will adjust that again for this next year, but it doesn't change anything for right now.
Okay.
It would have been great to have gotten a few of those businesses on already.
Yeah. And then in terms of inflation, is that adjusted for, or is it's not adjusted for? So if you kept the numbers the same, it would be a net loss to, in terms of.
I mean, inflation is included because there are increases every year because of staffing.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's all
So-
included.
But it's
got it.
not, yeah, so it's only to fund the program. That's why you basically look backwards to see what you need to do to fund it.
Okay.
I think that was one of the things that the last time I had this discussion was not as clear as it could be. If I understand it correctly, James's salary is your salary. The question is, when it comes to whether we're doing 80%, 85%, 90%, is who's paying for what? And,
Yes.
And that salary is set independent of this. It's part of I imagine the city has its own schedule.
Yeah, so the entire, that top set of rows, where it's the regular wages section, that is, I'm told from finance, this is what it is. And then when I even went back to ask, like, are we sure? They said, that is what it is. So I'm like, oh, so we don't ask, okay.
All right. So these are, we're just looking at the line items with the program, the second.
The second
lower
set,
half.
yeah, that lower half, and really most of that is set out of, it's really those two line items are about the only things that I'm told that can move, other than like the parking, which I already negated.
Okay.
to try to lower that one. Everything else, I mean, the advertising, that one technically, they don't say this is how much you have to have, but that, by looking backwards, is what we normally need if we need to do that.
So, if I understand it correctly, holding it to 90, without the minutes, without the database, which is sort of analogous to last year's, or the fiscal year 19 budget, we would go from a $65 and some odd cents, 65.43, we would actually go to 62.23.
Correct.
My suspicion is that that's the difference in salary between Joe and yourself.
That's correct. That is that basically the savings to the program for me coming in at a lower level than Joe.
Okay.
Even with the increases of some other standardized costs, still brings about savings to the program.
And which option is that?
That would be four. What do you call the neutral option is four. And I was looking at it, going, oh my goodness, it went down. How'd that happen?
Yeah, that's a good point. Okay.
Yes, that's what it is.
Seniority or whatever, okay,
Yes.
okay.
So I don't understand the thought process behind moving forward without the database fund build up. Can somebody just make that crystal clear to me? Because I feel like it's a good idea to have that. Like,
It's crystal, we will make it crystal.
I was
clear.
wanting to do that. Thank you, beat me to it. It was some-
I don't know.
it just seems like a really good idea to have that so that we can make the
Yeah.
program more easier and less time consuming for reporting businesses.
Yeah.
And make people happier further down the line.
I think the reason why we removed it last year was because we were trying very hard to keep our FTE costs low. That was a huge priority last year.
Yeah. And moving forward, is there a good argument for keeping it off? Other than that, I mean, what are other people's thoughts? Evan, what do you think?
So the question that you bring up that made me think is like, okay, so if we don't have this money for when this new database comes around, will we then not afford it or be forced to push it off to the next fiscal year? Is that right? Like, if we were to take advantage of this new database that's coming in, do we have to set aside money for it in this fiscal year to make that happen? I don't know. I might be confused.
It sounds like we're still kind of waiting to hear back
Yeah.
about a couple of numbers that may affect that
Yeah,
anyway.
but I won't have them in time
Yeah.
for this discussion, sadly.
So if we continue to move forward without the database fund build up, then we just don't even talk about it again until next year? Is that correct, or?
I would say probably not talk about it because there will be probably other conversations that I'll bring to you as it's being discussed, because I want to keep you guys in the loop, especially if it starts looking like a viable option. But other than that, I mean, as far as the money side, it wouldn't be a conversation again until next year.
Okay.
Well, I think there's several factors. Don, do you have
Yeah.
any comments, opinions, ideas? And do you mind if I turn the lights on?
Yeah.
No, that's fine. I mean, I like seeing the price go down for full-time employees. My company pays $2,000 every time, forever. But there are a lot of small businesses here. And really with the database built up, that fund, it's kind of out there whether it's going to go in with the fire marshal reporting. And I mean, they just got it good. I mean, it was a difficult software to use before. It's pretty nice now. But I prefer option 4 myself.
One thing for us to consider, and I'm not sure, what the potential outcomes could be, is if we were to think about putting aside some money, the possibility for it to be streamlined might be there. Like, for example, in terms of FTE for businesses, it might save businesses a lot of money if it is a streamlined process for them, like that it gets updated with this new system. I can't speak with any authority because we haven't seen it, but I think there might be a business, business might be supportive of the short-term increase in FTE for the long-term reduction in staffing time because of this, business support for, coming up with a new system that's, that works real well with, between the hazmat and the toxic board. So I'm just thinking, long-term, it might be a benefit for businesses and, citizens. I mean, there might be some like cooperative benefits. So, again, I don't know, but.
I just kind of look at that there's a lot of these smaller businesses don't have the chemical quantities like we do. And
Yeah.
I actually reduced from 35 to 27 chemicals just because the way SDSs are made, manufacturers don't like letting people know that they were using this stuff, so they quit using it. So I don't have to report that chemical anymore. But I think what they're already doing with the fire marshal reporting is, from what I would expect this tie-in to be, is pretty similar. And
There's some uniqueness about this program, which is part of the challenge.
Yeah.
yeah,
But that's our, as I was talking with the analyst, with the fire marshal office, is just try to find ways to.
yeah, I mean, it's a great program. The toxic inventory reports is different. And
Yeah.
boy, if you can get that streamlined, that would be nice.
Yeah.
That one's tough. It's a pain.
I find, so, not from a chair position, but just as a person who's reporting, the data collection, because of ERP systems, is relatively easy. What chews up all my time is adjusting everything for input into the new system.
Quantities.
Well, it takes it in this format, but this other system takes it in that format, and this third system, I have to. And
Yeah,
so,
yeah.
and some of it is irreducible. You can't make the Eugene Toxics right to know reporting the same as the state fire marshal's reporting,
no.
because they go by quantity. They have quantity limits that are much more generous, right? They, depending on how much you have, drives the
500
range.
gallon
thresholds are different,
Yes,
yeah.
the thresholds are different. The range reporting versus the
Totally.
down to the kilogram level. And so that's irreducible. There isn't that much you can do in terms of database modification to make it simpler.
It'd be a totally different program, aside from what it is now.
Because the non-reporting businesses, they don't have to do the system, they just pay.
No, they pay a fee and
They have to
then-
pay a fee and it's
Yeah,
done. So
they don't
those,
have to report.
so those are some of the smaller businesses that it's just a fee, it's not a FTE issue for that, or it's not a staffing issue. Like
Well,
they-
their fees based on FTE that they have.
Yes.
But they might not have to report because they have less than 2,600
Yeah.
pounds.
Yeah.
Yeah,
of
okay.
chemicals. And,
Yeah. So, yeah.
I don't know, just
So
the
then-
way the toxic inventory reporting is going now is, it's gotten a lot better. But then it comes in the issue of also with this is, are companies reporting FTE correctly?
because of the different,
And you're gonna see a lot of that.
Oh, I already have.
Yeah.
After we get through all this, that's gonna be
Yeah.
one of the questions I'm gonna bring to you guys.
Yeah.
And, I mean, that makes a difference for these fees for everybody else.
Dramatically.
Yeah. And whether they
Yeah.
have to report or not.
I mean, if I can, my personal recommendation would be to forego the 5,000 for another year.
And just wait on it.
And just wait on it,
Yeah.
there's
Yeah.
potential options coming.
I
You
think
get
it's
savings
out
to-
further than we think it's gonna be.
And
Well-
I think for myself, before, when we voted for it, it was when we had specific projects in mind that were being spearheaded. I think it's harder to vote for something like this without having a specific project that we're working on and put it towards.
Okay.
Cool, okay.
So, yeah, kicking the can down the road. We can do it for climate change, we can do it for.
The question is the $5,000, well, what's the $5,000 for, right? What are you saving for? We don't know
Yeah.
yet. Is the $5,000 a year appropriate for what we're saving for? We don't know because we don't,
Yeah.
and we could be way over, we could also be massively under.
Yeah.
So without the additional information, it's kind of,
There's too many
and
unknowns
meanwhile,
out there.
there is that immediate effect.
But I would like to say, the question about the funds from the last fiscal year, maybe we could, if those are something we could get, still have access to, then that would be where I would like to
That's actually very high on my priority.
Okay,
yes.
great.
Because there's a lot of stuff that we could do
Yeah.
with those funds.
Yes.
Just, yeah.
Of our two items we talked about, one was minutes. It sounded like we should probably start putting things to votes.
Yeah.
It sounded like minutes was pretty much, we're pretty even settled on. Do we need to discuss database update anymore?
I don't. I heard enough from y'all.
Had enough.
Okay.
Had enough.
So,
I guess, do we want to, does anyone want to put a motion forward on those two items?
There's
Or?
one other question, that's
Oh,
the
staffing
percentages.
level. I guess, yes, third item,
Yeah.
staffing level.
I mean, I support keeping it at 90%. Does anybody else think we should go above or below that?
so it sounds like, so we're talking, just for point of clarification, option 4, 90% staffing, a net reduction in the amount that businesses pay, but with keeping the same, staffing level. So,
Mhm.
yeah, sounds like a neutral compromise.
Will 9% provide you enough maneuvering room? Because there's a learning curve for what you're going through right now.
That's a question.
Yeah. I think it does. I really do. As I've been pouring through everything, I feel that is a manageable amount.
And I think he said that the fire department asked for him to stay on at 10%.
Yeah,
So
they-
that's their
they-
recommendation.
when I went to the fire marshal, she asked for, because I said in the last few years, it's been either at 90-10 or 85-15. She said either those two levels are good for her.
And so if we were to just hypothetically bump it up to the 95 staffing, that would be a difference of $456 that we're, that change. Would that be a $456 change, or am I reading that incorrectly?
Where are you
It's
looking?
the dollar difference from fiscal year 19 approved. It's on option 4 on the, if we were to go from a 90% staffing to a 95% staffing.
It's about a $67,000,
Oh,
or no, a
$6,000
$6,000 a year.
$6,000 difference.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, okay. I see
Jump.
what you're saying. Okay, so that is a significant amount, okay. But the fire department would be perhaps, disappointed that they would lose you in that amount of time.
Well, by how the charter is, it has to come to a consensus agreement between the city manager, which gets passed down to the fire chief, which gets passed down to the fire marshal, which gets passed down to me.
Okay.
That's how the negotiation moves in. So then I work with you guys to find out what the balance will be. And so, and what I've been told is we want at least 10%.
Okay. So if we did a 90% at the option 4 unanimous, then it's easy for them, they just sign off.
Yeah.
Okay.
If you were saying we really, really want 95, I need to go back and chat with them saying they're really pushing for this.
I'm not gonna really push for that unless you need us to, so.
I'm happy with 9 as well.
Yeah, that sounds.
So I think that pretty much.
Sorry, what?
Oh, is that good?
Oh,
Yeah,
are
okay.
you happy with the 90% for option 4,
Yes.
remove minutes and database?
Yeah.
Cool.
Sounds good.
Should I motion to adopt budget option 4 with the remove minute reporting and fund buildup at the 90% staffing?
I will second that.
Okay, so
Call the question, or
Open for discussion.
open for discussion?
open for discussion, which I think we already just did. I have a tendency to run things a little bit sideways. So voting, those in favor of option 4, at 9%? That's unanimous.
Cool, good job.
Yay. I think that's one of the big elephants in the room.
Yeah,
Huge one.
yeah. I know we're at federal level, we're at the local level.
So then the other item, one of the other items I gave to everybody was a draft work plan. I did change the format, obviously. And there's a couple reasons why. One was for myself to make heads or tails of what that spreadsheet was. I honestly struggled with it.
I like this.
So there were a couple reasons. One, I mean, obviously it provides some flexibility on my end by bucketing things rather than going down to line item. It also, as I was reading through a lot of it, there were a lot of things that if one area increased, another area was going to decrease naturally, or vice versa. And so it's like, okay, let's put these together, because on some of the things with compliance, a lot of the things said 0%, because we don't have to worry about it. Well, if we do have to worry about that, some of the other things that were right next to it, we're going to end up, you weren't going to spend time on that because you had to spend it over here.
Yeah.
So that's why I tried to do it, also trying to make it as clear as possible, hopefully for like the city council, for when they look at it, to be able to go, oh, okay, so that's why that is like that. Sounds good, because that's what I'm hoping for, to move as quickly as possible.
I need to leave, I have another obligation. You don't happen to have an extra copy of the work plan?
You can,
This is,
yeah, please. No, there's a
That
work
right
plan.
there, that's a copy of it.
Yeah, thank you so much for coming, and we will hopefully give a few minutes at the end to talk
well,
about.
thank you.
Take care.
Thank
Yeah, if you
you.
wanted to present a proposal or something to us,
Okay.
have a chance.
Thank you.
Thank you again.
And per the request today, I added the percents that I used to add up to those larger bucketed amounts, and made footnotes for each area where what article and section it applied to, or if it was just necessary to support the overall work to make sure those other things took place.
Yeah, I like this look of this. I think this is great.
Much easier to read.
The only thing is that the way we had it before, and that's just part of the history of the program, is that we had to make sure that everything that was explicitly stated in the charter was listed. And I know I like this, how it calls it out. I just want to make sure, I mean, for us specifically, I think it helps to have that matrix because we can just go through it and check stuff off, but it also,
So
I think you could have both, is what I'm
Okay.
saying, because it's really important because of sort of the language that we had in there to really show that, right, these things aren't required in the charter, but they're required to run a program.
Mhm. Well, and that's why typically almost all these, it's the exact verbiage that came out of the other spreadsheet. So it was, I just basically restructured, but kept the same information. There was one that I actually split into two, because they were two totally different things, but combined together. It was, and it was one that wasn't directly charter mandated, but it was facilitating projects and processes for the board, meeting prep and that type of stuff, but then also conduct an ongoing continuous improvement program, process analyses, and give recommendations to you guys. Those were technically two different things, and I put them in two different buckets then, because they made a little bit more sense in two different areas than right there. But I can definitely do that and provide that spreadsheet also.
Yeah, because I really do like how this looks. I think this is way easier for anyone in the public to look at, especially the city council. Yeah, and maybe that's just because I've been looking at the other one so long, but for me, I do kind of need to see this matrix because, so I can push things around a little bit because, for instance, you know, what would often happen is, and especially for you, I don't know if you changed any of these percentages that you had seen.
I changed it from when I sent it to you, which I already changed it before.
Oh, you did send a few, you did change a few more, okay.
Mhm.
So that's, that's sort of where that's where this discussion goes through each of these items and then figures out where we want to push stuff around, time around. And it's just a little bit harder, I think, in this format, but maybe that's just me.
What I like about it is it does allow James a little bit of flexibility, you know. I'm sorry, I'm at 2.1%, I can't do any more. No, I'm gonna steal a little bit from here and push it there and that sort of stuff, which is excellent. I think, yeah, the question is, you're gonna have us going, well, can we make that 9 and 8, move that extra percent over somewhere else?
Well, is there a way we can take this new format and say this is a reference from line item?
That's what I was saying, we can just add it, the
Yes.
matrix at the end, that's all it
And
is.
I mean, that's
Yep.
Right.
that's
Because
no
that's
problem.
But this is easy.
yes, I think the city council will be happy with that, for sure.
Yeah, that's no problem. And really, I mean, one of the areas I think that this year's taken more time, and it'll take less next, is like the budget fees and work plan will actually be 10%. That is not gonna take 10% of my time. And now, after going through all this, like, this first time through, it took a lot of time. But coming out, it's not. Because a lot of it is going to be a lot more standardized, you know, and yes, there's obviously adjusting the work plan, but a lot of the work plan doesn't change. It's just the quantities change.
Yeah, it seems like a really challenging thing by the very fact that you're supposed to quantify a person your time into these percentages, and it just like let's say you spend 9% of your time auditing accuracy of hazardous materials, and then you find somebody who's not doing it, and then you by default have to enforce reporting requirements, and if they didn't respond, then you might have to be impose penalties. So it's like there has to be some flexibility in that system, otherwise it's like
And obviously, the original matrix that you used did say these were estimates, and so that's there. But I will pull out the original matrix. I'm going to make some better reference points to be able to say that this is, this relates to this category and this item, so that it's easier to cross-reference the two.
Yeah.
But I can put that together.
This looks great though. I love it. I think it's really easy to read, and
And then this one is operating off the assumption of the 90%. So that's why the last item in there is the fire marshal office project. I felt like that should go in there since
It keeps it clear about.
it keeps it very clear. It's like if somebody goes, "Why is this only to 90%?" Well, there's the other 10%.
yeah.
I think, is this format sufficiently clear for everybody that we can look at the breakdown and see if we want to make adjustments to the breakdown? Obviously we prefer the full-on matrix, but is this something you can work with right now?
I think so, yeah. I am interested to hear what changes James felt.
I'll be right back.
We'll wait for you, Mark. We'll wait for you. You should be part of the discussion.
Yes, all right.
Okay.
One thing I can say that's off that topic is I did send everybody what was requested last time was a list of all the reporting companies.
This is avoiding him.
This is everybody who is all the companies that are currently reporting under the program, because it was requested. So if anybody wants to try to reach out to contacts to find another board member as far as an industry advocate. So I did send that out to everybody with the packet of materials. So
Cool.
That sounds great. Thank you. And then those 4 ones that are in the process are off.
they're not on here. Technically, they're not in the program.
Yeah.
So they're in this nebulous purgatory out there that they will be coming in.
Did you find them through they came to you, or did you see them on the map?
Some of them we already knew. They were already identified.
Okay.
I've been doing some other searching through the hazmat system.
Get the license.
So looking through who's requesting these licenses, because if they're requesting a license,
Oh yeah, then they should.
if they're over 10 FTE, they need to be in the program.
Okay.
And then the other one is looking at just everybody who's within those SIC codes within the city of Eugene. Then I just have to verify, are they within the city limits?
Okay.
Because they can have a Eugene address and be in the county.
It seems as though that map that has been 20 years in the making, it's I haven't actually seen it. It's a mythical thing for me.
I have a big copy of it.
I've
Yeah.
seen it.
The problem is it doesn't actually do anything. It just says, it's basically industrial zones. Well, that doesn't necessarily,
And it's way ahead of date.
yeah, so,
It is.
Yeah.
I mean,
My company's not even on it. We've been here since 32.
Wow.
and I was able to meet with the This is another conversation, I'm not gonna.
Yeah, no, but if you brought up a great point though,
That was the
like, is
whole
there?
point of it.
There's,
Yeah.
I actually,
Yeah.
Jill gave me back, because she asked me to look at it, and at that time, I think it was 34 businesses that were on there. It was about half accurate.
Man.
Some businesses no longer there.
Point of that.
Pardon?
That was the entire point of that.
She knew.
Oh,
I think it was IT's
I've had some,
availability.
I've had some conversations with a couple other people because of that map. And there might be some other options that we can discuss down the road, to try to get what you guys are looking for.
Yeah.
And make it be, usable and something that we can even put on the Toxics website. And
Yeah.
make it so it's a resource rather than something that goes out of date too quickly.
Historical document.
Because that's the problem, is that
Yeah.
give it 6 months, it could very easily be out of date.
Easy.
Because it's, not because.
Just
it's-
because businesses leave and
Okay.
businesses come in.
Yeah.
And with this gentleman that was here talking about El Raba, that would be a nice resource to know where the problems areas are, and you can just look.
Mhm.
Anyway, I apologize for hijacking you back. But when I left,
Yes.
we were looking at the differences, I believe, or the modifications you made to the percentages.
So the main changes that I made, this was within the original document that I originally sent out before I made this new version. There was a little bit of shift in I believe it was the education outreach and PR side of things of increasing some of the, really is more on the PR side with businesses, trying to really meet with some more of them, get them more on board with the process rather than try to lessen the animosity. So there's that portion. I've already had some conversations with a couple businesses as talking about the reporting for FTE, where already coming up in the spring, I'll be going and meeting with them to chat with, where their current status is and trying to just build some bridges. So that's one part, and that's one part that from the fire marshal's office they really would like that developed. I agree with that. And
do you know where you took off?
where that came out of, it's only a couple percentage points. I think some of that actually, I know one came out of the budget fees and work plan area. So two percentage points came out of there, because that was originally 12%, and I brought that down to 10% overall.
I was gonna ask you about that, like that number 2, do you feel like, I mean, it seems like it would take you a little bit more time to do this than it took Joe, so that's what I wanted to.
For
ask you
the
about.
budget fees and work plan?
Yeah,
Because we're talking about next year,
then, okay.
see, and that's things like, right now, we're
That's
talking about right now.
Right. Next, you got it, that's
Yeah,
right,
we'll
I
be up to
forgot
speed
about
by
that.
then.
Mm-hmm. And
Oh, that
hopefully-
wasn't meant as a slight.
No. It's like, oh yeah, it's very.
So that's kind of the weird thing too, is it's like I put numbers in, and now as I'm doing it more, I'm going, oh, I can probably actually reduce here or increase there. I feel for the most part, this is relatively accurate, and part of that was, what I don't like seeing is some things like the compliance and auditing is 21%. But at the same time, my fear is that this year that may increase, depending on what conversations that we have as far as looking at, are people doing this right? And as I'm still trying to dig into, how did Joe go about the auditing process? That part I'm still learning. So this year, that could take a little bit more. I think I'll get it down to fit within, but I'm still digging into that process because I haven't had a chance to very much. The other large area is within the program management area. And a lot of that's because that's kind of the catch-all for a lot of it's the non-specifically mandated stuff. But there are certain areas that, one of them I think that now, and this is just after today and after our conversation, that can be adjusted is number one in that program management area that's at 9%. That can be reduced. Because a lot of that was talking about this whole other, researching a new system. I don't think it's going to be 9% of my time for an entire fiscal year. And that's mainly out of the conversation we just had in the first half of this meeting.
So you might be able to steal a little bit from there, from one in program management and give it to compliance and auditing 5, which is the audit the accuracy.
Mm-hmm. And especially because I know there's conversations about how do we handle making sure FTE is correct. And that's a wild card right now that I see. If there has to start being more conversations on that, that's going to start eating up time. And especially in a way that my understanding is probably the best way to do that is to ask for certain payroll tax reporting forms.
Is to clear it up.
Well, because we're not clear on how companies report FTE when they have multiple. Is that the question?
Well, I mean, there's what would be the best way to get an authoritative number.
Okay.
Or see if there's a discrepancy that you can follow up and say, so you've got 50, on the OSHA 300, you're reporting 53 people, on this one you're reporting 13.
What?
And they come back and say, well, that's the processing site, and here's our store, and
Exactly.
but that's the follow-up question you have to make, right?
Yeah. So there's some, the process needs to be built, and then carrying out the process is a whole other thing, and how much time will that take, and everything. And I hope would be not too much. I look at it as another opportunity to build a connection, but again, the compliance and auditing right now is a wild card to me.
The other big one there is the conduct inventory process. That's finding other businesses that need to be part of the program, right? 6 on program management.
Yes. So that one, and that one, because of the reason why I left that one at a higher number is I think that's a really important one coming into this year. As I did some quick searches, seeing there's a lot of businesses that I'm afraid aren't a part of the program that should be. That could take some footwork this year, but it could have a profound impact on the program.
And that's one that we've identified as a priority in the past for the board.
This is just looking at like how are they reporting it and what's actually.
Well, that's again saying
Yeah.
there's potentially not people in the program, so identifying what businesses those are, making contact, most likely going and meeting with them, educating them about the program, and at the same time going through and finding out, should you be a part of this? And most likely, I'm seeing there's going to be at least multiples that are going to be yes.
Yeah.
And then onboarding them into the program.
And that's a huge opportunity.
Because again, that will affect the whole FTE conversation dramatically.
Yeah.
And spread the
load.
Spread the load.
Yeah. More larger businesses, less impact on small
More
businesses.
businesses, period, yeah.
Yeah.
Everyone helps. And it's just a matter of finding them and, finding out, okay, maybe they are, oh, no, we're actually out, our SIC code is different, right?
Yeah.
Or maybe we have 10,000 employees, but they're all in other countries, we only have 9 in Eugene. Or, no, we actually need to be here.
Or one of the great ones of, actually, this side of the street's outside of the city, and this side of the street's inside the
Yeah.
city.
Which is
20-year-old
part
map.
of that map.
Yeah, that map.
Exactly.
Part of that issue.
Because it
And
comes up. How do you-
I lived in that situation growing up. Marsh Street was the divider between the county and the city of Springfield.
Yeah.
So it was, literally I walked 10 feet and I'm now in the city. So, but businesses, that makes a difference for the
Yeah.
program.
Yeah, and then it just comes down to a question of what does the map
So
What map are we using?
So I have to do,
Yeah,
I'll look at the business and I can look up where they reside.
that sounds great, that's, yeah.
We're running a little tight on time. I'm not sure if we're in a position to vote on a work plan or make more adjustments to work plan. Because I'm looking at, I think we have about 10 minutes. How much more do we need to go over this? Is this something we should bring back next? Because we have the second meeting. Part of the reason we pushed so hard, it was to get 2 meetings lined up, was to catch all the little stuff.
My input on that is, I mean, there's some validation that needs to be done. Not saying that you're hiding stuff, but this needs to be balanced line by line. And then what you're talking about also, and updating, referencing line numbers to the right. And that would be really useful.
No problem.
But, and then that way it's an easier check to make sure that it's the same as the existing one.
Could that be possible to get, sort of rebuild the matrix and then maybe have 2 columns?
Yeah, I actually have a copy of it here, so yeah, I'm just gonna add another column that's gonna reference it back to where it is in this also, so they're gonna cross-reference completely. And so you can basically look at it in 2 different ways. But you can work line by line or
Yeah.
area by area.
And then we can maybe go into deeper depth or discuss more at the next meeting.
The next one, which is the 25th.
2 minutes.
Are there any other line or items in the meeting that would benefit you for us to do now prior to the next meeting, just in terms of facilitating?
I mean, for me, that would be the most helpful thing, is that I will go back tomorrow. I'll have that document sent out to everybody, if everybody can look at it and send back to me any feedback. That would be helpful, because just like I did with the budget options, I will do the same type of thing, because at this point, it's more work on my end, but for the reality that we have limited time frame, to be able to bring to the table, here's an option, or or options, so that hopefully we can capture what needs to take place in one meeting.
Okay. And I can't recall what the rules are around like voting online. Would we just wait
Cannot.
until we're physically here? Yeah.
We can communicate though.
Yeah.
That's fine. So that's why I'm saying, give me feedback and I can make adjustments so that when we come here, a vote can happen.
Sounds good.
So, well, we still do have a few more minutes to talk about it before we hit our 5 o'clock
It's okay.
Cinderella hour.
Wrap up.
But were there any other points on the work plan that you wanted to discuss?
Are there any things that people would say they feel are a priority that I should flag?
I think you've already flagged the biggest priority is.
Yeah. And building vacancies. I assume there's been no movement on the vacancies.
So that's a weird one to me, because I don't have a whole lot of control over it. So it's been posted, and so right now I wait on the city manager's office to let me know, hey, we have somebody. And then I get that and I bring it to you.
Well, it's kind of difficult. Most of the EHS managers, like me, are really busy. And Joe actually called me and asked me to submit. And just because I'm on the phone with her all the time, discussing the toxic inventory report. And I don't know, maybe it's gonna get to a point where you make those phone calls. They may not be aware, or they're just, maybe the emails are going junk down the wire. Your return receipt, see if they read it.
This might cross
So
public.
my name's Jason Goldberg. I'm the Safety and Environmental Manager at Cipro Block Mills, which is a company that's been since 1944, 75 years this year. I was asked to join to come as a silent observer by my employer. I guess I probably could bring a lot to the committee since I've been 25 years as an EHS manager. I've been transplant from California for the last 2 years I've been here, and perhaps I could fill your vacancies on.
Applications online.
We can maybe chat some more after meeting. I think it's coming to a pretty quick close at this point. So, do we have,
I just wanted to say another thing, and this is always kind of troubled me in the past, so this issue, we have zeros for everything that's related to compliance. And it is something that's required by the charter, so I would like to maybe possibly propose that compliance, a lot of these compliance ones be put all together, and that we should have some percentage towards compliance. It's required by the charter, whether we know exactly how we're supposed to be doing that. It does seem like an issue. It needs to have something, and it could, at any time in the future, could take up several percentages every time.
That was my sense too, like, what happens if it does come off and then
Yeah.
kind of shift it over?
And honestly, that was part of my concern, that's why I went to shifted the format.
Yeah.
Was because then I could be like,
Yeah,
it's within here, it's within this time.
Yeah.
yeah.
well,
You
could
can do it.
add a 10th line, contingency, 1%.
Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah.
you brought up, I mean,
Cushion.
there is
Cushion.
there's the potential like combining a lot of these things where they've been made separate into one.
Well, they can't really, because it needs to be separated out. I mean, maybe in this format it can, but in the, which then I think gets a little too complicated, but because they are specific charter line sections, they really should be kept separate. But I'm thinking that maybe for the compliance, we could just have a compliance combined section. Does that make sense?
So you explain potentially,
Oh, sorry, please go ahead.
sorry, I'll stop there. I interrupted you.
Let me think about that. Maybe I'll propose something for this compliance part. So I can see how other people look at it.
And I know in the past, the reason why it's been zero is because it hasn't needed to happen. That's
No,
that's
completely true.
that's what the notes say.
Right,
So that's all I have to go off of.
right.
Probably not for a long time.
Well, compliance is an issue, it's a standing issue,
Mhm.
so it does need time. I think the question has been more along the lines of how to do it. How to deal with the compliance issues. Okay. Yeah. So. Right, so we have this issue, for instance, we have this thing about imposing penalties for non-compliance. A lot of these are being dealt with by the fire marshal's office, but, they are something that is, compliance is something that has taken up Joe's time, but it's been at 0% because it's sort of been a real sticky issue, so.
I mean, one option also is to even do something with market at a less than 1%.
Yes, something
And
like
then,
that.
and then it's,
Okay, I do like that idea
Yeah.
too.
And
But I
then-
think we do need to have something put towards
Mhm.
compliance because,
Otherwise, there's no like enforcement mechanism, it's like we don't have, yeah, that's been my sense too, seeing those zeros, it's like, yeah, how do we deal with this
Or
situation?
perhaps, again, have contingency or time to be spent on enforcement or compliance. And if it's not used, then we get to spend it on outreach or something, you discover toward the end of the year, end of the fiscal year, that you haven't had any real issues, you've got plenty of time, then you can spend some time doing stuff.
so
Anyway.
maybe one of the things is that the compliance can just be pulled out and the auditing can be pulled out.
make it two separate sections.
Maybe that would be the best, and then just say less than 1% or something, or,
Yeah.
is that, okay, and then is that okay, and then we can look at it?
Yeah, and so that would be like the enforcement, the order, lines number 7, 8, and 9, which are kind of like, I don't know.
It's pretty much all the zeros,
Yeah, and also
Yeah,
number
yeah,
2.
2, 3,
yes,
4,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah,
That's something I think we can bounce back and forth in the email before the next meeting, come up with suggestions for you.
Mhm.
Lay out different options there.
Do you want to talk at all about the public comment? requesting that we, I mean, I think he had a couple of things he wanted us to consider, but one was that just, I think he was asking if we would support the ban, yeah, the styrofoam and this plastic bag ban.
Yeah.
I will say for all the years I've been on the board, we've never had anyone come and request us to support something like that.
Does that really fall under the charter at all?
Does not,
That's a question, yeah.
even
I mean, I
though
like
personally
the
I might
idea.
agree, I might
Yeah.
agree with it.
Yeah, I really like his idea, but it's really not in the scope.
Yeah, it is a question, like, it's the optics of like the toxic sports
Right.
and then they're toxic and like we could, but it's a question, like, does it, have any bearing?
So, but I really do like the idea of us working with other boards, and I really want to be supportive of that. So I don't know if there's something we can do, write an email thanking them, or,
Yeah, if there's something like, just, I don't, yeah, exactly, because I felt like that was unresolved, like I wanted to have a chance to just, chat with him or have some kind of dialogue, because I want that bridge, I think there's a lot of productive stuff, for
There's
everybody.
contact information, it's
Yeah, why not write him like a thank you email, and then we can express our individual interests, like not attached to the toxic board,
Yeah,
and just
yeah,
say
yeah,
we wanna
yeah.
continue to look at options to support each other, but this just doesn't fall in the scope of the toxic board.
do you mind doing an email if that doesn't?
So that would be like CCing us
Yeah.
on that.
Yeah, I'll copy.
If that's okay.
Well, usually, he would send the email and then he would bring it to the next meeting and
Got
say
it.
this is what I did,
Yeah.
for a staff report.
So yeah, I'll draft something, bring it here.
You don't have to bring it to us, you can just send it.
Just send it? Okay.
Yeah,
so just as a, hey,
thank
This is
you,
what I said.
this is,
Okay.
yeah, so
If there's
usually the
something
staff
like that.
report,
Yeah,
but Joe
I'm
would
totally
just,
on board.
for the staff report, she'd bring every single kind of piece of communication she had had, and we would just kind of go, she would go through it real quickly, and then that would just be one of them, so.
Okay, anything else in the last minute or two?
5 seconds.
35 seconds? I don't know, I'm just,
Oh, should we assign a minutes taker for the next meeting?
I will do it.
Will you?
Oh, thank you.
If you don't mind me being always 2 minutes late, I'll do it.
well, if there's no other items, then, or nothing we need to bring up immediately, quickly, I call this meeting adjourned.
All right.